record. If you would prefer not to be seen, you can click off your video. Otherwise, we're all set to record. So again, thank you for coming. It's my pleasure to be the MC today and make introductions. My name is Lawless, for those of you that don't know me. I am the Interim Associate Director of Continuing Education. It's my pleasure to introduce Michelle Riggio, who is the Interim Executive Director of Continuing Education, and of course, John Amdahl, who is our OLLI President. So today, what we are going to talk about is OLLI is today, how we got here, and detail our roadmap to in-person programming. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Kath. Just want to say it's so great to see everybody virtually. There's a lot of faces on here I haven't seen since mid-March, and I just miss you all. So speaking of mid-March, as you can see in the picture, right after we had hosted our spring kickoff luncheon, remember some volunteers kicked up their feet so everyone could see those cool Bradley socks. And just after we had completed our first 4 learning trips this season, everybody's plans were disrupted by the pandemic. And we canceled all of our spring classes, our spring trips, our spring OLLI Originals, and most of our study groups. And while the entire planet adjusted to a brand new way of life, your OLLI leaders and your continuing education staff were really hard at work behind the scenes, looking for every opportunity for some quality learning and socialization opportunities for our membership. And in under 4 weeks, we were able to conduct what we now call the Great Zoom Experiment. We knew we had to get our membership trained on the Zoom video software, so we immediately scheduled 26 free sessions that month. Nearly 200 people participated in these sessions, which were again led by your fearless OLLI leaders and our staff. The experiment also continued with 2 pilot programs, including a live scones baking demonstration by our former director, Janet Lang, and if she's on here, hi Janet, and our very first social hour. And these 2 programs attracted almost 80 people. So we knew we were on the right track. And before I go any further, I just really want to thank Catherine Lawless for leading this Zoom charge, and the rest of the continuing education staff, Diana, Christy, Gwen, Bonnie, Danny, and Debbie. They have done amazing work for this program in the past few months, so thank you. So with the success of these pilots, we moved on with 3 study groups, a happy hour, and our very first virtual learning trip. And that trip was to Time, which featured a curbside meal pickup and a live presentation by Travis and his head chef. By this time, word was getting out that OLLI was one of the only games in town. And as you can see on the photo on the right, that was featured in a front page Journal Star article. So I'm going to have John pick it up from here.
Okay, well, Michelle mentioned the Journal Star article, but let's start with OLLI. On your screen right now is an excerpt from a letter from OLLI, just talking about what a wonderful job that we're doing, complimenting us on our efforts. We've actually been mentioned a couple of times in the OLLI national OLLI newsletter, once for the virtual trips we're doing to restaurants, and then again just for how we've been able to pivot to doing the Zoom types of things. We did get a chance to interact with some of the reporters and the media people in town. Just 2 stories I'd like to share with you. One is from Leslie Rankin, that wrote the story in the Journal Star and had the story about how we were doing at Time. But in discussing that with her, her comment is that she's just amazed that OLLI's the only game in town. Everybody else seems to be stalled, and she was just impressed with what we were doing, and we managed to get the really, really good article out of that. Steve Tarter, who is a former Journal Star reporter, he currently runs the Tarter Source blog. We've been able to have interactions with him. He's given us a couple of plugs now on his blog, and he had the same kind of reaction, which is that we never missed a beat, and we continued on. I'm not quite sure he's quite accurate on that we didn't miss a beat, but maybe a month or so later, we perhaps did that. Speaking personally, I think I had one of the first events that was canceled. I was actually scheduled to start a study group, I think the day after we put a full stop on everything. And so Michelle talked about experimenting. We went ahead then a couple of weeks later and did an experiment with the people that were originally supposed to meet face to see how it would work as a study group. We learned quite a bit. I tried 2 sessions with them, learned quite a bit. And then finally here in June, I was able to actually then do that study group with them and be able to actually give it to them virtually and be able to do that. So anyway, so we're having just a great time doing that. Michelle was thanking the staff. I want to thank the volunteers. This is all a volunteer-driven organization. The content we have, the instructors that we have, the study groups that we have, it's all about the volunteers being willing to step in and do that. And a number of these volunteers were really, really uncomfortable about being able to deliver content through Zoom. And we were able to work with them to provide the coaching and make sure that they were able to do that. Finally, earlier this week, we met with the new president. He was beyond complimentary on what we were doing. He expected us to just talk about maybe doing a couple of lectures or something like that. He was just amazed that we were able to deliver the full scope of our programming and doing that. And I'll just also brag on Michelle. She's done a good job of keeping her boss, Joby, happy. And we was on that call. We heard all kinds of nice things from her about what she's heard about OLLI and what's happening there. So you'd be happy to know, everyone, that Michelle is in good standing with both of her bosses. So, Michelle.
Thanks, John. I think Joby's here. So hi, Joby. Goodness. Okay. During these pilot programs in April, your volunteer curriculum committee was also hard at work behind the scenes. The coordinators met several times to get some classes lined up for May. And the reason behind that is we wanted everybody to really keep their OLLI Wednesdays open. So we made the decision to hold classes on the first 4 Wednesdays of each month, just like we usually do in April and May. So for the pilot classes, we hosted 4 online classes featuring a rock star lineup of our frequent instructors. And we were absolutely enthralled by the reaction. We had 122 people sign up. It was just amazing. And at this point, we had a good feeling that things were rocking and rolling in the right direction. So the executive committee decided to keep these classes going each month. And we already had 44 classes in the hopper for October. So the coordinators, they basically worked overtime and contacted these instructors and lined them up for these monthly classes. They did an amazing job. And in May, we started to line up more of these creative virtual trips and OLLI originals. We hosted 3 trips in May and 4 conversations in May. And as a result, not only were our OLLI members learning new things from these leaders, but our local businesses were getting a much needed economic boost from our OLLI members. We also had some free events, as we mentioned earlier. We hosted 11 more Zoom trainings and 3 more happy hours. Happy hours are great. And then in June, we really hit our stride, as evidenced by these graphics. We had 35 events with 451 registrants. Again, incredible. And for July, the month's only halfway over, and we have 437 registrants for our 24 events. We simply can't thank you enough for your support.
Okay, I want to thank all of you, because the people on this Zoom call are the ones that make this number here possible. We've had, you heard the numbers in terms of registrations. We've had 497, almost 500 people as individuals that have registered for at least one OLLI event so far. And we've had a total, if you add up all the numbers that Michelle gave before, we've had a total of 1857 registrations that have taken place. So this is just an incredible amount of work. Every one of those require an email to you to make that happen. And then the wonderful thing about Zoom is we start looking at the positive. We can do things that we could never do before. So some of the events that we've had is that we were able to do a virtual tour of Crystal Bridges Museum, which is located in Bentonville, Arkansas. And so we had a chance to walk through that museum a little bit and do a deep dive on several of their art pieces. And we could never have done that if we were meeting face to face. Likewise, currently here in July, we have Chris Alglin who's an FBI agent that used to run the Peoria office. He subsequently has gone to Quantico, and he's running this 21st policing program. And we had him scheduled originally to do some stuff, not realizing it was going to become kind of the topic in the policing space. And so we're hearing from the guy that's giving the coaching to the police departments across the nation on what we need to be doing to be able to move into the 21st century from a policing perspective. And again, we could never have had him if it weren't for the fact that we're doing this through Zoom, and it doesn't matter where the instructor is located at. And so now we're starting to reach out to other instructors across the country, past instructors that have moved away. You may see some names come back here in the future as we bring these people back into the fold. And on the flip side, we've had participants from all across the country, people that ended up getting stranded in their winter location, staying a few months longer, people that went to a summer location to get away from it all, who are able now to dial in and be able to participate and be able to do that. We talked about the OLLI conversations, and I'd really encourage you to take a look at these. We have been able to get the who's who of what's happening in the Peoria area for local leaders to come talk to us. Everything from the sheriff to the health department to the leaders of the various communities. We've heard about the food bank. We've heard about infectious diseases. This has been just an incredible lineup of people, a 1-hour program, local leader coming and talking about here's what's happening, and more importantly, here's what the impact of the whole pandemic has been in their particular universe and their particular perspective on what's happening. Michelle?
Thanks, John. During this time, we're also really committed to staying in touch with our members. We're used to seeing you every day, and this is strange for all of us. So what we're doing is, in the past couple of weeks, we've had volunteers call nearly 1,000 of our members and touch base with them to make sure everybody's okay, to make sure they're aware of our programming that's online right now, to make sure they are aware of the Zoom training and get them signed up if needed, and to make sure they're getting our online newsletter. And as you can see on the screen, this month we also produced the first of our now monthly brochures. They're in an online format on our website, and we really did this so we could have some professional and consistent messaging. And when you open up the brochure, it will almost seem like you're back at home. It's just OLLI as normal. So we're really happy to have those out. They will hit, each month will hit our website probably by the 3rd week of the previous month. So soon August will be up in the coming week or so. Right, Kath? Right? Okay. We also sent a membership survey out to everyone, 3,000 people this morning. And we're looking for everyone's thoughts about our current programming online and your thoughts about how to get back in person in a timely manner. We also have 2 waves of postcards going out, one at the end of July to people who have participated in our programming since last fall. And then in about the 2nd week of August, we'll hit the remainder of our brochure mailing list, around 8,000 people, with a 2nd postcard with a different message saying, hey, OLLI's still here, look us up, here's what you need to do to sign up. And we've also, as I mentioned, the email newsletter. We used to send that pre-pandemic every Tuesday. And then starting in March or April, we started doing it 3 times a week because we wanted to make sure we were touching base with everybody. And right now we're down to 2 times a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. So we hope you're all enjoying that. John?
Okay, so I also want to thank you for your donations. Look at the numbers on the screen there. We had a goal this year of $55,000, and we ended up closing out the books for this academic year at over $91,000. Absolutely spectacular. And the really, really good news is that 47% of our OLLI members were donors this past year. This is the highest ever, significantly higher than what we've had in the past. We want to thank you. These are extraordinary times. We've got unusual expenses, not so ordinary expenses, and we continue to have ongoing opportunities to provide programming for you. And so your funds that you're providing here through your donations are being invested directly into the OLLI programming and the things like the shuttles that we will get back to using and the other things that we need to support, including this Zoom contract that we have, so we can get together and be able to meet like this and be able to see each other, at least virtually, as we move along. We'll keep you updated on our fundraising plans for this next year, but I just want to thank you for what you've done in the past, and thank you in advance for considering a donation to OLLI during the coming academic year. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Now for the roadmap for 2020 and 21, which you've all been waiting for. And as I promised in the update letter in late May, we would provide virtual programs for most weekdays for the summer and into the fall, and we've done that. So in light of the ongoing unpredictability of what's going on with COVID, the majority, but not all, of our programs for the remainder of the calendar year will be virtual. OLLI has the full support of Bradley, and we are all committed to doing the right thing when it comes to returning to in-person, because the safety of our learning community is of utmost importance. For the remainder of the calendar year as well, the Bradley campus will be open only to faculty and staff and students. Right now, we have 3 continuing ed staffers on site on campus now, and the other 5 of us will be back full-time by August 17th. But we are going to start dipping our toes into some in-person programs soon throughout the community. The first of which will be a movie at the Peoria Riverfront Museum on the big screen. Now, if you've ever been in that big cinema, big theater, it holds almost 200 people, I believe, and they'll let us seat 50. And on Friday, August 28th, we'll screen The Right Stuff for 50 people at a time. But if we get a really large response, we'll hold two separate screenings that day. So up to 100 people could participate. John?
Okay, so I think we all enjoy the opportunity to get together virtually and still be able to do some learning and do that. And I'm sure we all are really looking forward to the day when maybe we can get together in person again, and there's nothing quite like being together in person. So we're actually going to run a bit of an experiment here in August. We're going to offer one of the classes. It'll be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the first 4 Wednesdays, where we're going to give the opportunity for up to 20 people to be able to meet face-to-face at 5 Points. Now, 5 Points actually contacted us to offer this this opportunity here. And the way it'll be is it will be in a large conference room. If you put out the dimensions there, the chairs are going to be 10 feet apart on center, so everybody will be 6 feet apart just fine. We'll be able to put the 20 people in there and then set up a computer. We'll have a staff member there that can set up the computer and the screen. So you're going to be able to see the Zoom screen without having to go through all the login and do that. So here's my request for you. If you have friends who are OLLI members and are saying, you know, I just don't want to deal with the Zoom thing, I just don't want to deal with the computer stuff, I just don't want to deal with all the technology, make sure they're aware of this, because this is a chance now to just come, sit in, participate, and not have to ever touch a computer and still be able to participate in what we're doing. We'll see what the reaction is with people. We'll see what the response is. We're prepared, and 5 Points is prepared that we can take this up and do more classes like this and maybe offer future classes in a hybrid type of thing. And if it's really successful, we can expand this to study groups and potentially offer some of the study groups in a virtual thing. So you heard early on about experimenting. This is another experiment that we're going to be doing in August, 2 of them, one with the filming, the other one with this OLLI class. Depending on how these experiments work, we'll decide whether to continue, do more, do less, whatever we do there. So we'd encourage you to consider that if you're at all interested in being together. Yes, we're going to require masks. Yes, we're going to require social distancing during the time. And no, there'll be no scones, I'm sorry. We're not going to be providing any food or that type of stuff. You need to bring your own water and do that. But we are going to be doing this in a way that it can be done safely. I have personally, Sharon and I have personally been attending the Washington City Council meetings up there at 5 Points, and we're just really impressed. We think they're doing a fabulous job on sanitizing. You can't walk through, every time we walk through there, you see all the cleaning stuff out there. They're really focused on making sure it's a safe environment for people. And we're confident that we're going to be able to provide a safe environment for 20 people to come and participate together in a virtual study group, excuse me, in a virtual class during the month of August.
All right. Thanks, John. So to reiterate, for August, September, and October, we'll have classes on the first 4 Wednesdays of each of those months with the Zoom rooms at 5 Points and possibly other locations. And then almost every other day of the week for that month, we'll have study groups, virtual trips, and conversations. And again, depending on the success of the right stuff at the museum, we may have monthly movies as well. Now in November, we won't have classes and we'll be wrapping up the end of our study groups. But we are working right now to line up a big name speaker or two to volunteer their time for a post-election presentation and talk. And right now we're aiming at November 18th or 19th. So stay tuned for that. We've got high hopes for a really great presentation. And every December, it's usually our tradition to wrap up our programming, and then staff puts the finishing touches on the spring program. So before Christmas break, we have our March, April, and May brochure done, and it's ready to go in early January. But this year, what we're going to do is, wrap up all of our programming, maybe host some sort of a fun social event on Zoom, maybe a satellite, we're not sure yet, and focus on communicating our plans for the first 10 to 12 weeks of 21. So for January, February, and March, our goals at present, and obviously depending on the circumstances within the state, are to continue offering the monthly Zoom classes online on Wednesdays with more satellite options. Study groups, now again, depending on the circumstances in our state, can begin meeting in small groups at sites in the community with the option of a hybrid, meaning some people can attend the group in person and some people can attend the same group online. We'll also continue our virtual conversations and trips with the caveat that if we do find an opportunity to have an in-person trip where there's enough space for us to enjoy a quality experience, where we can have everybody drive to and from, then we will, absolutely. And speaking of our educational travel program, there are many, many aspects of that that need to be addressed before we return to our traveling as usual. For instance, seating on the shuttle, cleaning the shuttle, the use of our headsets, finding a restaurant that will host up to 30 people in one space, and finding a site that will open their doors to 30 guests. That's a big one. And because our domestic and international multi-day trips sometimes require over a year of planning, we have already begun to start work on our September 2021 trip to Newfoundland. And that actually ties into the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attack. So more information on the forthcoming. And I've said it before, we miss you, and I think that you miss us, and just want you to know that as soon as possible, as soon as we can in 21, we will get back to normal in some form or fashion. And I know that the continuation of virtual might be disappointing to some. I do know deep down that our learning community will do what we always do best, and that's to learn, adapt, and to grow from all of this. And John had mentioned this before, but I also want to repeat it, that our great Zoom experiment has really led to some positive opportunities. The hundreds of people that we've trained on Zoom have then now been able to connect with their kids or their grandkids or their book clubs or their churches using that software. Plus, the volunteers who've been teaching and facilitating for us are getting really good at it. And what that means in 21 and beyond, we'll be able to do some sort of hybrid classes and study groups forever. So people who winter in the South or don't like to drive in the snow or have moved to Paris can still be part of OLLI at Bradley. John?
Okay, let's kind of return to basics. On the slide there are the 4 points, which are the pillars of our strategic plan. Who is OLLI? What is it that we're trying to do? We want to make certain that our programs are absolutely high quality. We want to make sure that we're providing you something that you're looking forward to. And in doing that, we want to make sure that everything that we're offering gives you a sense of belonging, that you're feeling like you're part of the group. You have a chance to participate in things. We want to make sure that everything we're offering is really high quality experiment. And so the early offerings we didn't charge for it because we weren't sure what was going to happen there. So it wasn't until we got confidence that we could really offer high quality learning experiences that we started then charging for that and trying to cover some of the costs that are there. I'll say personally, the staff are beyond helpful. If you logged on early here and watched the staff there, you saw many of them were on phones. Well, they were on phone calls with some of you that hopefully were able to get in if you had any questions or whatever your problems were. I've had the privilege of teaching a couple of classes, and we've had issues once in a while, and the staff have been able to call the person, be able to work through it, be able to help out, and to be able to make that happen. And finally, we hope that our programming gives you a sense of being involved and being able to grow in your knowledge and be able to grow as an individual.
All right, thanks, John. I just want to wrap up here and just say, I mean, you hear it, we say it all the time, but we are the best OLLI in the nation. We truly are. And it's because of you and what each of you bring to our program. And I just want to thank you again for your continued support, your participation, and your commitment to OLLI at Bradley. And I have every confidence that OLLI at Bradley is just going to get stronger from here on out.
And so for my wrap up, I'd like to ask you to get involved. OLLI is a volunteer-driven organization. We could not possibly do what we do if it weren't for all of you, all of the volunteers that make it happen. So on the schedule there is on the screen there is the schedule for the upcoming meetings. So we have an upcoming study group meeting happening. We have a curriculum committee meeting happening. We have membership development committee happening. We have learning trip committee meetings happening. This is the chance for you to get involved, provide your ideas, and more importantly, provide your network and your contacts. Many times these trips and these speakers happen not because the OLLI staff calls them up and says, would you be willing to do that? They don't have any standing. We have potentially standing with some of these people, and it's been so often it's a case of who does the asking as to whether or not the person's going to say yes or no. And each of us have got just amazing networks. We have amazing contacts. We have amazing people that we know. Now's the time as we think about this virtual programming that we're going to be doing every month. Are there people that you know, people that you like to get engaged and be able to do that? Finally, as you're talking to people that aren't involved with OLLI, invite them to sign up for the newsletter. It's a really simple email address, olli@bradley.edu. If they don't like to do email, they can call and they can get that. But just want to make sure that that you're sharing the opportunities to get involved with OLLI and sharing the opportunities that you've been experiencing with the people that you know. So that's my wrap up. Catherine, if you want to wrap up.
Okay, well, John and Michelle, we have several questions here. And again, to the participants, please feel free to go ahead and type your question into chat. We do have a few that were asked as we went. And John, I think this first one might be for you. In regard to the OLLI class experiment, besides attendees, will members also be able to? So if you could clarify that a little bit.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to be the instructor for this. This is the class in August. It's going to be the History of the Future class that I've taught twice before. I have updated it, and it's all ready to go. In fact, Sharon proofread it this morning, so it's all set to go. What we're going to do is on the first week, I'm going to teach the class from home. It'll be the same setup that you see right now, and there'll be an OLLI staff member up at 5 Points that will broadcast there. We'll talk to the participants. Well, first of all, if no one signs up, we're done. But if we get a group up there at 5 Points, then the staff up there will have a discussion with those people about what their comfort level is. If I come up there and sit kind of in the far corner of the room and and give the presentation without a mask. I think that the muffling from the mask will make it unacceptable for me to be in the room there with a mask. And if people are comfortable with that, and if the room size accommodates it, then I'm going to do the second hour, the second week up at 5 Points, where I'll do the broadcasts there, and people then at home can continue to look in as they always did. So they'll have the same experience that they had the first week. And then on the last 2 weeks, it'll depend upon the outcome of those two experiments as to what we do. And we'll see what people feel about that. And this becomes in kind of a pilot for some of these hybrid things down the road, that to see if people are comfortable with it or not comfortable with it.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. We do have a suggestion. It's a great suggestion. I suggest you set up a drive-by for half a dozen scones. We might have to try that. Thank you. Okay, another question, Michelle, I think this one's for you. What assumptions underlie the return to in-person programming in April? Is this dependent on the state being at phase 5, i.e. complete reopening / vaccine deployed, and or something based on Bradley's own planning for returning to a more in-person format?
I think all of the above. Bradley follows the state guidelines. So obviously for 2020, we're not on campus. Our in-person things will be in the community. And as campus opens back up and more academic space becomes available, we will get back on campus.
Yeah, and let me add to that. We've had lengthy discussions on this with the OLLI Executive Committee, which of course are the volunteers that help to steer this. And the realization is, if you think about the Michael Student Center, that's a terrible facility for social distancing. The hallways are too narrow and the classrooms are too small. And so, so we need to be thinking about, if we're going to do face-to-face, the other question is, do we do the face-to-face at the Michael Student Center, or depending upon where we are on the phases, do we even consider doing face-to-face at some other location? So I just want to make sure you all are aware, we are absolutely looking at every single option, exploring every single option, and seeing what we can do to make sure we get back together face-to-face in a safe way.
Well said, John. Thank you.
Another question, could we reduce the number of people per trip and maybe do 2 trips on different days using both shuttles to social distance?
I can take that. I'll take it. We can try a lot of things, but we also need to be mindful of the cost of just taking a few people in a shuttle here and there. We want to make sure that we cover our costs at that point. I think our best bet for the first few in-person trips will be to have everybody drive themselves until we get things set. Hopefully there'll be treatment and a vaccine soon, by next spring, and we'll be almost back to normal by then.
Okay, great, thank you. And the next question, and if you want me to answer it, Michelle, what is the status of spring study groups that were interrupted by the pandemic?
That's all you, Kath, go ahead.
All right, now it's all me. Okay, so, and if there's a specific question you can ask me, but most of the spring study groups were rescheduled for fall. We thought we would be in person and we're not. So we are working on converting them to Zoom, or if the facilitator would like, we're going to hold them until it's available to do in person. There are a couple that were converted to Zoom and that will kind of pick up where they left off in August. So it just kind of depends on the study group, but we have slowly but surely been converting them to Zoom or deciding to hold them until in person. So again, if you have a question on a specific study group, please go ahead and send me an email. The next question is, will there be just 1 class per month for the moment? Do you want me to go ahead and answer that?
1 class per month, you mean?
Right, so I think what she means maybe is that, so for right now, for July, we have 1 class at 9, 11, 3, and 1. So we have 4 classes, okay, and that will again be our format for August. In September and October, we hope to have 8 classes offered, which would be 2 at 9, 2 at 11, 2 at 3, and 2 at 1. So I hope that answered the question. So, and then will there be a registration fee like the $95 per class per study group?
I'm sorry, Kath, you cut out there.
Will there be a registration fee like the $95 or just per class and per study group?
I think right now we're going at the a la carte option at this point until we are fully back to our normal schedule.
Okay.
And that, I'll just interject there, that gives you tremendous flexibility. So if you take the full 4 hours of classes, that ends up being $80 compared to the 95 that was before. But you now have the opportunity to take just one class or 2 classes and only pay for what you're doing there. So I think during the Zoom time, we're trying to be incredibly flexible. It's another example of the staff really, I think, responding to what the needs are here for us.
Thank you, John.
Okay, great. And someone asked if they sign up for one of the free Zoom events like happy hour, do I need to enter my credit card information every time? And so I will answer, like, for our happy hour, that's a good question, so that most of you know. That is one of the few unique events that we are now putting the link in our weekly email. So you do not have to register. Based on member feedback, we do know it's can sometimes be a little tedious to keep information. When you register for individual events, you do need to do that. But for our happy hours, please just look at the email, and you can register if you want a reminder link, but you're no charge on the credit card, or you can just click the link that's in the weekly email. Okay. And are there plans to continue with quarterly membership dues?
Right. Once we're back to paying the normal fees, there will be the quarterly $5 fee. Right now, we're sort of building that $5 in to the majority of our charges.
Okay. And John, this one might be for you. Someone said they're scheduled to teach a class in January. Are there any best practices for virtual instruction with OLLI? He's a high school tutor and is tutored online with white paper software called BitPaper.
So, so we're actually developing a guide for instructors. There's a draft that Catherine and I have been bouncing back and forth that we'll have out there. But from a practical standpoint, what we've been doing is that if you have somebody that wants to be an instructor, one of the OLLI members or several of us as volunteers have been meeting with those instructors and making sure that they're comfortable with how does the sharing work, how do you monitor the chat, what's the process on how we do that. And so we've been spending whatever time is necessary to get these people comfortable. The other thing we're doing with potential instructors is inviting them to sit in on one of the OLLI classes that are going right now. So yesterday classes, we're working with a couple of people as potential instructors, and they actually sat in on a class and have a chance to see how it goes. And now we'll follow back up with them and then provide whatever coaching that they need to be able to be comfortable to be able to do the coaching. So the short answer is we'll spend whatever time is necessary to make sure that a potential instructor is comfortable being able to deliver their content through Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
And I think this is one of our last questions. So if you have questions, please go ahead and add them to the chat. Someone asked, for some of the local potential trips, is there any thoughts to have someone video at the facility that may not have room for our normal visits?
You know, Diana, I'm going to call you out of mute. We haven't really talked about that, and I'm not sure if that's been in the back of your mind, but my first reaction is we haven't thought about that. What an interesting suggestion.
Well, we actually have thought about that a little bit. We were looking at Hummingbird Haven. Certainly everyone enjoys going over to Hummingbird Haven. In her particular situation, she is very compromised, and I did not feel comfortable even having myself go out. But yes, that is an option, and I think we are going to really look at different ways that we could potentially tour in person, tour virtually, and try and find the best fit. So we are certainly willing to try different things out and have some more experiments.
Yeah, and I'd second that experiment thing. We actually had a trip committee meeting here just a few days ago, and we touched on that a little bit here and there along the ways, and we didn't really come up with the perfect trip location to run that experiment. So if any of you got some ideas of a perfect trip location to try doing a virtual trip to, we'd be open to those nominations, see if we can try to put something together, and maybe it's someplace that a staff member could go to and assist in the logistics there, and the person there could give us a virtual tour. If you participated in these restaurant things, there have been a couple of really cool virtual tours of kitchens that that I have especially enjoyed, and so I think there might be some opportunities to do this. It's got a bunch of technical issues, but I think we can work through those.
Thank you, Diana and John. And
Okay. We did have another one, yes. Will you continue restaurant meals and tours?
Diana, would you like to answer that one?
Hope we have to ask you to unmute.
Unmute. Press the space.
Yes, we are going to continue to work on those and hopefully broaden out what we can do. I think they've been pretty successful. I know it's been really a joy to be able to even just dropping off food in people's cars. It's been nice to be able to see you in person.
And I want to reiterate what John said and Michelle has said, that any ideas you have, restaurants, you know, favorite places, the more input we can get, especially if you have connections with anyone. Sometimes they're a little unsure or unwilling to maybe do it. And then like with everything we do with OLLI, once they do it, they're like, oh, your group is so nice, would love to do this again. So again, please email us with any thoughts or suggestions you have.
And if you have that survey in your mailbox today, one of the last questions is to add some ideas at the bottom. So we can't wait to hear back from everybody.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that is the end of our questions. So we'll take a minute to wrap up here. I think we're going to share our screen again. I just, on behalf of Michelle and John, the executive committee and the staff, all of us here, we just want to thank you so much for taking the time to spend a few minutes to learn more about where we are, where we've been, where we're going. And we can't thank you enough for all your support. We so appreciate all that you do. And again, if you have any questions, any input, you know, we're always looking to hear from you. We love getting emails, so please keep them coming. Anything else, John or Michelle or anyone?
I just want to thank you again, and again, just make the request. This is a successful organization because of you and because of what you do as a volunteer. And I just encourage you to think about what you can contribute as a volunteer to our efforts here as we're in these unprecedented times.
And I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in. This was the first time we've ever done anything like this, and it's another successful experiment. So thank you. It's great to see everybody.
All right. Thank
Our
you.
largest
Thanks,
one,
Beth.
over 100.
Yay. All right. Bye-bye. Let's see.
Thank you to Christy for running the slideshow too.
Yeah, that worked good.